So when I got divorced, or no, I should say when I knew I was getting divorced, when I knew it was going to happen, the first thing I did was call a divorce attorney. And that's great. And I think that was 18 years ago. And I think that most people's gut instinct says, okay, I'm getting a divorce. I need to call a divorce attorney. And that's true. But things are changing a lot in the divorce industry. And people are realizing that you definitely need a divorce attorney to get divorced. But there's a lot more people, a lot more divorce professionals who can help you get divorced and who do things that divorce attorneys don't. And by talking to these people, you can save money on your divorce attorney because you're not spending all this time asking these questions of what a divorce attorney can do or not do. So that's what I want to talk about today. I have a great guest who is a divorce attorney, and we're going to talk about what exactly divorce attorneys do and things that they don't do. My guest is Tiffany Hughes, divorce attorney and managing partner for the law office of Tiffany M. Hughes in Chicago. Tiffany has been practicing for 18 years, right?
13.
What?
13.
Oh, why did I think of it? Okay, I'm aging you. All right. Can we please edit that out, Rob? Thank you. Tiffany has been practicing for 13 years, which is still a really long time. And hi, Tiffany.
Hi, Jackie. Thank you for having me.
It is always nice to have you on the show. We've known each other now for about 5 years. And, in those 5 years, we've done several podcasts together. We've talked a lot. I've referred people to you. I've heard feedback from you. And I have no doubt that you are a great divorce attorney, both in litigation or if somebody wants to mediate. So I want to tell my listeners that Tiffany wrote this article called What Do Divorce Attorneys Do and What Don't They Do? And we're just going to talk about the article. Tiffany, should we start with the what attorneys do or what they don't do?
I'd say let's talk about what attorneys do, divorce
Okay.
attorneys do first.
All right.
And
So,
then
yeah. Do you agree with me that people get divorced and the first thing is, okay, I have to call a divorce attorney? And that's true. You can't get divorced without an attorney. So tell me
agree.
about the initial Oh, go ahead. I know what you're going to say. You
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, I think that that's probably the go-to, like you're saying, for most people is like, okay, I'm getting divorced. Traditionally you call the divorce attorney. And I think that that's a great idea, but I think that you also with this podcast it's going to be such a great tool for you to have all of the things that will help you in deciding how your divorce should look because you have a lot more options and different avenues to take than I think traditionally were there before. But yeah, a lot of people, first thing is they call my office.
Okay, I love what you just said because it's true. If you're listening to this and you're thinking about divorce and you're just trying to get information, or you're in the middle of a divorce, it's not too late to make some of these calls to these other people. So let's start, Tiffany, with the initial consult. So if somebody calls you, I know you can only speak for the way that you work, but if
Right.
somebody calls you and they want to get an initial consultation and a case assessment, what does that look like?
So first, the client calls in. We gather what's called like conflict information, so we can run a conflict check. So if somebody's asking you for your information, we always try to say we apologize for kind of being intrusive, a little bit of like your address and the other person's name and what currently is at issue. So that way we can run the required by Illinois law conflict check to determine whether or not the other person has contacted my office. Now, because I've exclusively been practicing in the area of family law for 13 years, I have a lot of people that call my office and there may be a conflict. So Once that's been done, then we move right into um, essentially what are your goals and what are the main issues that you have. And I like to go through that first to kind of feel it out on whether or not I think we're going to be a good fit. Because it's not just, at least for my office, like I don't take every case. I can only take so many cases at a single time. And I may not have the availability to take the case, or I may not want to take the case. And you may feel that, maybe it's not a good fit for you, but I think it's important to go through the goals and the expectations at the very beginning to then decipher on, okay, based on that, I do have the time to help you. And then if I'm interested in working with the client, is when I'll have my office send over the documents. But during the call itself, we can't talk about strategy because I don't represent the individual yet. Now, once we are retained and I become the attorney, that's when we really get to like hone in on, okay, let's talk strategy, not only now, but at each step as we go through. And that's when I explain all of the steps.
Okay, now I want to back up for a minute. You said that there might be a conflict of interest. So for people who don't know this, I don't know if anybody listening ever watched The Sopranos, but when Tony and Carmela were going to get divorced, Tony called every divorce attorney in the New Jersey area so that Carmela could not use them. So I'm not saying that if you're listening, your ex is going to do this, but if your ex happened to call Tiffany or another attorney, that attorney or Tiffany might say, I can't work with you because your spouse has already contacted our office. So that's what she was talking about. The other thing I want to say is, Tiffany, don't you find that in the initial consultation, a lot of people really don't know what they want? If you say, what are your goals? They could say, I don't know.
Absolutely. I think also the goals and the concerns kind of go hand in hand. Like, I'm concerned I'm not going to have enough money. I'm concerned that, he's going to have parenting time when he's, intoxicated, or I'm concerned. So I think goals and concerns are kind of hand in
Gotcha.
hand. And
Yeah.
then the expectations of like, I want him to never have parenting time ever, ever. And it's like, okay, not interested.
I
Like,
want him to suffer. I'm sure you've heard that a lot.
oh, I mean, I don't mind some suffering, I mean, that's fine. But I mean, realistic expectations of, unless there's serious endangerment or there's a basis for restricting somebody's parenting time, to have an expectation just because you don't think that they should have parenting time does not mean that that's what it is. And I'm not interested in working with people that have that, that mindset, the expectation, because that's just not going to happen. Like, again, if unless there's a reason under the law, a person is entitled to have parenting time. Just because you don't want it, or because you don't like the fact that he lets the child watch TV until 12 o'clock at night, that's not a basis to restrict his parenting time. So we're going to have an issue, right?
Right. Anything short of massive substance abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, or that if a child is in danger, a judge is going to give your ex custody, period. There's no questions asked. These judges are so liberal. And I don't even say that in a bad way, it's just a realistic way. If they know the child is not in danger, your ex is going to get equal custody unless you guys go to mediation and decide otherwise.
Or it's just agreed upon
Right.
otherwise, or there's a hearing, not a trial, but there's like a temporary hearing where a judge says, yeah, I think on a temporary basis. But then again, it would only be temporary. It's not, restrictions on parenting time are not meant to be forever. They're meant to rectify a current issue, and
Right.
then that issue gets better, right? That's the idea.
Hopefully.
So
Hopefully.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I know from the beginning with expectations with people that it's not going to be a good fit for me because I'll never be able to meet those expectations.
So the initial consultation and the case assessment is like a job interview. When you and Tiffany or your attorney that you go to know that working together, you both decide makes a lot of sense, Then you move on to what Tiffany was talking about, the legal advice and the strategy. We are going to move on to the third thing that a lawyer does. But first, we're going to take a short break. You're listening to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff. I'm your host. Today, I'm here with divorce attorney Tiffany Hughes, a 13-year attorney veteran, and and Tiffany and I are talking what do attorneys do and things that they don't do. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Divorced Girl Smiling podcast. My name is Jackie Pilosoff, and I am your host. What exactly do divorce attorneys do, and what do they not do? That's what we're talking about today. My guest is Tiffany Hughes, Chicago-based divorce attorney and managing partner of her firm, the Law Office of Tiffany M. Hughes. And let's move on, Tiffany, to the third thing attorneys do. Document preparation and filing. That just sounds like so boring, complicated. Tell me about that.
Well, okay, so this goes hand in hand with number two, which is legal strategy and legal advice and those things. Because during that time, which is the first call that I'll have with a client after they've retained me, is explaining all of the complicated stuff, kind of a 101 of divorce, if you may, because I find that clients feel extremely stressed and anxious because they don't know what to expect. They don't know what's going to come next. What is the process? What does it look like? What are approximate like time periods of things? What should I be doing? What shouldn't I be doing? How can I help? How can I hurt? So the documents, after we've kind of gone through, this is what you should expect of sorts. The document preparation and the filing is pretty much just what we have already discussed. So it'll be my explaining of from the beginning is if you're looking to file for a divorce, the first step is the petition, which is called the petition for dissolution, which dissolves the marriage, asking the court to dissolve the marriage. And what we're going to do as far as, serving the other spouse. Does his spouse already have an attorney? Is he or she going to be representing himself, herself? Kind of like next steps based upon what the current circumstances are. Do you know where he or she lives? Is that an issue? So kind of going through what the divorce 101 looks like will help with the filings and preparing of the documents.
Okay, now the reason I said yuck sounds boring and all that is because I remember having to fill out like all this stuff about my budget, what I spend, all this stuff. And I was one of those people. Some people it might be easy for. I was one of those people. It's like, I don't know how much I spend. I mean, this was 18 years ago. I was like wealthy and I didn't really think about it. I'm not wealthy now. Well, I mean, I've been in all different financial brackets, but back then I was so busy being a mom of young toddlers that I didn't look at things. I just spent as I needed to. And so it really forces you to look at what you're spending, what your income is, and that takes time. And you have to gather all your statements, and it really does take a lot of time. And that's why I said it was boring. But the good news is you only have to do it once, and then your attorney pretty much takes care of all the rest of the filings and document preparation. All right, so let's move on to another thing that attorneys do. So after all of this filing takes place, you go to the negotiation and or mediation phase.
Yes. And to your point briefly about the yucky documents that are awful to fill out because they are awful in the process of tendering all the documents, which are awful, my office will always assist a client in any way. So if that means if you want to give us your login, we'll log in and we'll download all the things. You can change your password afterwards. Trust me, we don't want to go in your stuff. If you want us to just walk through it on the phone with you and be like, or do the calculations for approximately how much you spend based upon the statements, we will do as much or as little to make it as easy or as, whatever works for you. So once we get through all of that, which is very important because it's disclosure, right, of the assets, the income, the debts, all of the things that are needed so that we can then move forward and say, now we have the picture, the bigger picture of what's called the marital estate. So all of the assets and debts accumulated during the marriage. And if there's anything before the marriage that's non-marital, any inheritance that's non-marital, it means it doesn't go in the marital pot. So once we have that, we can start saying, okay, Illinois is an equitable distribution state, which means we start off with usually 50-50 of the division of the assets. So let's look and see what that looks like. What are your goals? Do you want to keep the house? Is that possible for you to keep the house? What about this asset? I look at, which a lot of attorneys don't, and I actually teach other attorneys on, is the pre-tax, after-tax consequences of assets, and considering that when you are allocating and doing an equitable distribution. So if a house is paid off, you can't put 100% of a cash asset essentially on one person's side of the balance sheet. You really have to divide that out so that they have an equal amount of cash compared to a 401k, which is a pre-tax, or a traditional Roth, which would be a pre-tax. So looking at those things when we're looking at the negotiation and or mediation. So it's just important to have that full picture after you do all of the yucky stuff with the discovery.
Okay, I want to say one more thing about the yucky stuff and the discovery. I want people to remember who are listening. I got divorced 18 years ago. So everything was paper. You had to go to Kinko's and print. I don't even think it's called Kinko's anymore. It's FedEx, but you had to go print out all the documents. So now it's actually a lot easier because everything is online and you can just send links and secure files and things like that. So maybe it's not as yucky as it was when I was getting divorced. All right. So after the negotiation and mediation, this is where it kind of splits off, and you could end up going to court, right? And
Right.
this is another thing an attorney does for you. This is number 5, represents you should you have to go down that road of litigation. And you might know that right from the beginning that forget it, it's going to be, litigation, or it might happen later. Look, we just can't settle in mediation. And this is where an attorney, in my opinion, truly shines or bombs. What do you think, Tiffany?
Oh yeah. Well, the problem is a lot of family law attorneys are not litigators. They're mediators. They wear mediator hats. They do collaborative law where they're, essentially a different form of a mediator, to put that kind of lightly. They're not litigators. And so, I'm a mediator, but I'm a litigator. So I wear a mediator hat all day long. But I'm also a litigator. I do trial work. People hire me for trial work. People hire me for, representation during mediation. So, it is very difficult when you have an attorney that isn't able to represent you in the litigator capacity because you need somebody that's going to be strong and be a zealous advocate. So definitely for us, the goal is to avoid court. So some clients are like, I've spent $10,000 and I haven't even been in front of a judge yet. And I say, you're welcome. You don't want to go to court. That 10,000 could easily be 40,000 by the time we have a
Absolutely.
trial and this. So no.
Absolutely. Okay,
So
now Tiffany, isn't this something you think that comes up in a consultation? Like, that's how you know if Tiffany's a good fit. If you think, well, there is a possibility I'm going to have to go to litigation. Now you know Tiffany's a litigator. I know other divorce attorneys who are fantastic, but they will tell you themselves, I'm not a litigator. I have to get someone else in my firm to do it, or get someone, hire an outside counsel. So if you think that might be part of your divorce, that's something you bring up in the initial consultation. All right,
definitely,
last
definitely.
thing that attorneys do, well, it really isn't last thing, is enforcement modification if you need to change something after the divorce is final, and other post divorce issues. So, can you give me a percentage, maybe, maybe not, of people who have to go back to court after their divorce is final, if you had to guess?
I would probably say 80%.
Really?
Eighty
And why
percent
is
if
that?
you have, if there's maintenance, which is formally called alimony or spousal support, or if you have children. Because usually what will happen is at some point in time during, whether it's during the maintenance period or it's during the 18 years of child support, there's been a change in income. A substantial change in circumstances is what the law calls it. And that's what usually will bring somebody back. Now, it's not a major issue, right? It's really just numbers. It's going through. I have the software that the judges use to calculate the figures for that. So it's pretty straightforward. But a lot of people, I would say 80% come back for that.
Now, you also have to remember that if you can mediate your divorce, tell me if I'm right, Tiffany. If you can mediate your divorce, don't you think those people have a better chance of not having to go back because they learned how to communicate in mediation? They learned how to work it out. So maybe they don't need lawyers anymore, which can save you a lot of money in the long term.
I mean, I think that idea and that concept of the communication is obviously it's a big part and it's key if that's something that you are able to communicate together. But at the end of the day, somebody's going to have to enter an order modifying the current order. So you can't just modify the
Oh,
order
right.
without having an order entered that essentially replaces the other order. So maybe you guys can work together in concert to say, this is our agreement, just draft this up, and maybe see a mediator if you are able to communicate in that way. But a lot of people don't know how to do the calculations the proper way, and so they seek guidance from an attorney anyway. And somebody like from like my office, you know, if it's a very straightforward issue, I mean, it's not going to cost you very much. So it's, you know, cost benefit analysis, you're probably better off having an attorney just at least make sure at the very bare minimum that the numbers are correct before you do it.
Right. Okay, we're kind of running out of time, and I really want to get to the things attorneys don't do and how Tiffany and I can help you to tell you who else to call during your divorce. Now, before we get into all of this, I want to let you know if you worked with Tiffany, she has a whole list of people and she can recommend that you talk to. Like, for example, the first things attorneys don't do is provide therapy or emotional counseling. So if you start calling Tiffany or you're any attorney and you start saying, I can't do this. I'm so scared. I'm so upset. And these are all valid feelings. My ex already has a girlfriend. I can't believe he would do this to me and all this. Tiffany is charging by the hour, as are all attorneys, to talk to her. And she doesn't have a degree in uh, LCPC. She's not an LCPC or a therapist. And so she can recommend, or you can go to Divorce Girl Smiling and look at all the therapists that are there. You need therapy. What do you think, Tiffany?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that I don't think it ever starts off where it's like, okay, I'm going to provide therapeutic sessions or services because I don't have that degree. I do have a psychology degree, but that's not the same as being a
Okay.
therapist. Um, and I think it evolves into a therapeutic session to where then I'm like, okay, well, this is where I think, have you explored this, avenue? I explain like in my divorce and like, my experience, like it's not a bad thing to reach out to professionals, don't think of it as a negative thing. This is a very positive thing. And so I think again, I don't offer that. I can't help you with that. if I feel as though we're kind of crossing that line as to, okay, you need therapeutic sessions, I will absolutely recommend it. And um, the people that Jackie that you have are phenomenal. That are partners with Divorce Girl Smiling, and I think that that's just it's a lot of money to spend talking to a lawyer when they're just not, it's above our pay grade, essentially.
Well, you bring up such a good point because you say at the beginning of the relationship, they're not going to be asking you for emotional advice. But as you get to know Tiffany, she's just so sweet. She's kind. She's a warm person. We laugh. As I've gotten to know you, Tiffany, I could see how somebody would be like, "Can you believe this? Oh my gosh, I'm so upset." And I could see if I was your client myself doing that to you. And the thing is, you're not qualified as a divorce coach or a divorce or a therapist. And also, you're charging because that's your business model and you have to because your time is valuable. So, I want to urge people, I tell people now, I would not get divorced without a divorce coach. I'm just saying, I think it is so important. These coaches, the ones on Divorce Girl Smiling, are amazing. Every one of them has been through a divorce. They'll help you emotionally, but they're also trained coaches to help you through decision making. And that's number two of what divorce attorneys don't do. Tiffany wrote, they can't make personal decisions for you. So tell me about that.
A lot of clients will say, well, just go ahead. I mean, like, do whatever you think is best. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I'm happy to provide you with legal advice as to what I think is in your best interests. And, does this make sense for this particular situation? Should you settle? What are the chances of you getting a better outcome in a trial? Like going through all the different things and possibilities and outcomes for you. But at the end of the day, I tell them, this is something that you have to live with. What do you feel comfortable with? I can't make those decisions. I work very closely with my clients. We do have very, very close relationships. Um, but I can't make those decisions for you. I can only lead you to what I think it would be best, and you have to make that decision.
Besides saying, do what you think is best, do people often say to you, what would you do? I'm sure they
Oh,
say that all
yeah.
the time. Is
What'd you
that
do?
something that you will answer, or do you say, like, I don't think I should say that?
I would say well, my situation was very different. And so I wasn't in this situation. Or I get, what should I do? Well, I can't answer that. Um, I don't know what it is. I have an idea. I know what you're going through, but I'm not in your shoes and I can't make those decisions for you. I feel like if I were to do that and then somebody didn't like that, then they would
Wasn't
be like,
happy with the outcome.
right. And
Mhm.
then they're like,
You
oh,
would feel
well,
like maybe it's on you. Okay, but
yeah.
the thing is, I'm telling you, to my listeners, these divorce coaches, they will ask you all kinds of questions. They are trained to help you come up with the right decision on your own by asking questions and really helping you think about the right things so that you can make the best decisions for you. All right, now we're really running out of the time. So, the next thing, one of the other things that you don't do is handle financial planning and asset management. I did not know these things came up with divorce attorneys. Do people ask you for
Right.
financial advice a lot?
They asked me for what they think should happen with the assets. Like, okay, if I resell the house and then we get the cash and then what should I do with that? And, should I roll it over into the 401k or should we, is it better for me to get the 401k and cash it out and then put it into something else? And so I will explain the tax consequences. I will explain like the pre-tax and after-tax cash and liquidating accounts, but I can't give them advice as to what financial, like where they should invest it, right? Financial advising work, because I'm not a financial advisor.
Okay, so what I want to tell my listeners on Divorce Girl Smiling in the trusted professional section, there are four wonderful financial advisors, all who are CDFAs, certified divorce financial analyst. These are the people you want to call who you say, if we sell the house, what would I do with the money? What is my budget? What do I need to live on? Then you can go back to Tiffany and say, okay, I did this full financial plan and I need $10,000 a month to live on. So, based on that information, here's what I want to do. Here's what I want to go after. Or Tiffany can help once she knows what you need. So, see how you can get these other people involved. Then you're spending less time talking to your lawyer and you're spending more time coming to the conclusions of what's going to give you the best possible divorce outcome. And now we're really out of time. So I just want to do one more thing. I want to talk about one more thing that divorce attorneys don't do, which is handle non divorce legal matters. What does that mean?
A lot of people will say, well, do you handle, um, my friend had an issue with her doctor, and her doctor essentially caused more issues with the surgery, and
Oh,
this was never disclosed, and could you help my friend with that, or could you help me
okay,
with
got
with commercial real estate closing, or something like that,
it.
or
Okay, but you can refer to other
yeah,
lawyers.
I don't personally handle that. I have great people. If anybody out there needs a personal injury attorney, I have great references for that. Um, I
All
am
right.
a licensed real estate agent, but I don't practice in that sense. However, I do have access to the MLS, and so I can assist in a certain amount of things, but other things I have a network and I refer them out.
Okay, I want to tell my listeners that one thing that is needed by everyone who gets divorced is a new will and trust. And if you don't have one, I want to recommend Emily Ross Wadowski in Chicago. She's been doing wills and trusts for people getting divorced for 17 years. Great person. I've given her personal referrals. Everybody's really happy. It's also a fixed cost. So when you get your will and trust done after your divorce, you don't have to worry that every hour you're talking to your attorney, you're being billed because it's a fixed cost. So I just wanted to give her a plug, but that's an example of a non divorce legal matter where you might need an attorney. And one thing, and more thing that I left out was that when you're talking to your divorce lawyer, you might say, like, well, can I keep my house? That's probably a question you get asked all the time. Well, Tiffany is not the person to ask that to. They now have people are becoming certified divorce lending professionals. They're mortgage lenders who have a specific niche in helping people getting divorced. These people are great because what they'll do is give you financial scenarios of here's if you keep the house and you buy and how much it's worth. And you can also involve a CDRE, certified divorce real estate agent. So this is very important to work with a team of people because then you'll have that answer. So there's a lot more professionals I want to talk about, but we're totally out of time. But Tiffany, thank you so much. I love this conversation. I feel like we gave some people who are newly divorced, newly separated, or going through a divorce such great advice. So thank you so much, as always.
No, thank you as always. And if anybody has any questions or needs anything, you can always reach me via email at Tiffany Hughes at tHughesLaw.com, or you can call the office at 773-893-0228.
Love it. I would highly recommend Tiffany. And I also want to tell my listeners if you like what you heard, you can go to divorcedgirlsmiling.com to find all these professionals we were talking about. You can also go there to read articles, to listen to podcast episodes, and to download my mobile app or sign up for my free consult. So thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you real soon.